Welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast, featuring advice and interviews about athlete branding. Learn how marketing, public relations, and broadcasting can grow your brand. We also have special episodes to talk about recent news, events, and anything in the world of sports. The podcast is sponsored by Pliable, a versatile marketing, PR, and broadcasting company that identifies opportunities and creates tailored content for its clients. Now it's time to roll. Here's your host, Glynn.
Thanks, and welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. In this episode, we're talking about athletes who are past their playing days, and we're talking with John Coyle, who is the founder and CEO of The Art of Really Living, and he has lived. He has quite a bio. He is a champion athlete, Olympic medalist, also with a product and design engineering degree from Stanford, and also a seasoned executive, has really done a great job. Also in the sports space, is an Emmy-winning sports producer at NBC, five-time TEDx speaker, a professor at 3 universities, and an award-winning author of 2 books. He is also a world-leading expert in the fields of innovation, design thinking, strength, resiliency, and so much more. That brain behind him that he's got in his background speaks to what he does for everyone's mental mindset as well. John, welcome into the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Greg.
Absolutely. Well, I always like to kick off these interviews when I kind of get a chance to know somebody a little bit, and talk to me about how you first start getting involved in sports. Let's hear that story.
You know, I got the 10,000 hour rule pretty early. I stumbled into loving bicycling. My dad got me a big wheel when I was 5. I wore the wheels off 2 of those. Then he got me a real bike when I was 8. And he invited me to go on some tours with him. He was like a bicycle tourist. Mm-hmm. I said, sure. And so we ended up doing a 35-mile, then a 50-mile, and then a 100-mile bike ride when I was 8 years old. I ended up doing 13 what they call century rides, 1,300-mile rides this summer when I was 8. So I ended up getting my my 10,000 hours in pretty early on bikes and also on skates living on a lake. So yeah, it was really cycling and skating were my 2 sports that I went to the world championships, etc. in.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty impressive. And a little shout out here to my daughter, who we did actually the trek across Maine during COVID. And it's a fundraiser. You have to ride over 180 miles. And of course, at 8 years old, kind of brings back my memories of that, because all we did was go around a road. We had basically at the end of the road, it was a dead end road, and we would just do circles because we didn't want to be out in the traffic. We didn't want to do all that. So we got our miles in. We didn't get up to the 10,000 hours like you did, but we certainly enjoyed time on a bike. I think there's something peaceful about that, isn't there, John? Just that time by yourself.
It's such a low impact, but yet muscle and bone strengthening exercise. Like all the cyclists that I know are 10, 20 years younger than they really are. Like they just, like runners though, on the other hand, they age quick.
Yeah, they take a beating. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So talk to me about your Olympic career and kind of when you knew that this was going to turn into something, special.
Well, I stumbled into some what were probably native talents that I then, put the effort and time into. And so I began bike racing when I was 8, began speed skating when I was 9, or at 10, actually. My dad noticed I was the fastest kid on the lake on skates when I was 10. So he said, let's go to a speed skating race. I didn't know anything about the sport. I had never worn the big clunky long blades before. I show up on this beautiful oval of ice for a 3-lap race, first of many that day, expecting great things to go forward, given my track record on the lake ice. And I watched as these graceful figures just disappeared around the corner in front of me. And it was a 3-lap race. By the second lap, I got lapped by all 8 of them. Oof. So I tried to get off the ice, but they wouldn't have that. So they had me back out there finishing that last lap, embarrassed in tears, vowing never to skate again. But my parents weren't having that. So I was back out there. And, by the end of the year, I was 3rd in Michigan State Championships. At age 11, I was Michigan State champion. Age 12, I won the nationals. Age 13, made the national team. And then I eventually went on to go to the Olympics, where I brought home a silver medal.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love hearing that story. And talk to me about being an Olympic athlete, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about when you go to the Olympics, having worked with Olympians before. Give me your Olympic experience.
Yeah, mine's a little different. Mine's probably closer to Bodie Miller than others. I I was training, I was living, I was going to school at Stanford in California with no coach, no training program, and almost no ice time, dodging figure skaters and little kids. The
Right.
few times I was getting any ice time, but I still managed my senior year to get 12th place in the world in the sport of speed skating. So when I graduated and joined the Olympic team full time, I was pretty certain in my head that I would go from 12th to 6th to first in the 2 years I had to prepare for the next Olympics by finally having time, support, ice, coaching, all that stuff. But they put me in a program of fixing my weaknesses, which turns out were many and varied. And I went from 12th in the world to 34th in the world to not even making the US team 2 years later in the Olympic year, finishing 30th in the US trials I had won 2 years prior.
Mm.
So at this point, I'm ready to quit because I'm terrible. But I did sort of harken back to my original coach that I grew up with, who was always his mantra was race your strengths, like focus on your strengths. And so I was like, you know what? I'm racing my weaknesses. Let's not do this anymore. So I quit the team, not the sport,
Right.
started training on my own again, which nobody wanted to happen. Everybody came out of the woodwork, but I did it anyway. I had the support of my parents. And so
Yeah.
I trained by myself for an entire year. And in a sport where hundreds of seconds determine first from second almost all of the time,
Yeah.
my first race back 1 year to the day of missing the team for the Olympic trials at the World Team Trials in a non-Olympic year, I broke the U.S. record by over 5 seconds. I broke the
Wow.
world record by over a second, and I went on to set every single U.S. record back to back. All which is to say, doubling down on your strengths is the way to go.
Yeah, there you go. Wow, that's a very interesting story. I had no idea. So let's talk a little bit then about how you kind of ended your career, because that's always
Yeah.
an interesting transition. So you go on to have the success that you did, and kind of when did you know that it was over?
So I can remember standing on the podium in Lillehammer. And people always ask you, what were you thinking? And for years, I gave them the response they wanted to hear versus the truth, which was it was
Right.
amazing. Like
Yeah.
you can actually watch a video of that, and you watch my face go. I bend the neck, I get the medal, and then I do exactly this because I'm literally thinking about should I keep skating? I have 4 more years. I'm 26 years old.
Right. Yeah.
I'm
It's all
30.
going through your head.
Hope I don't get drug tested because I definitely don't have to pee and I'll be here all night and I'll miss the
Yeah.
party. So that, I was not present at all for that moment, unfortunately. So I did decide to go 4 more years because I wanted a gold medal. And,
Right. Yeah.
and your listeners will all know that, we're wired to win, not for second, right? I was a one-timer first loser, one Olympics only, second place. So I wanted to be a two-timer first winner. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I trained for 4 more years, 3 of them on my own, having really great success. The fourth year, I got back with the team, which was a huge mistake. They overtrained me again. That ended up not making the team again. And so humiliated. I'm 30 years old. I have never had a job. I don't know anything about the working world. And I've got to start all over from the very bottom of Maslow's pyramid. I don't have anything.
Right.
And fortunately, there was this thing called management consulting that hires people that have no experience because they know they can work you to the bone if you're an athlete. So
I was gonna say, yeah.
that's an option for
Yeah.
ex-athletes for sure. So I went and I did my first year at Goldman Sachs, spent time at Enron and other companies, and rebuilt my career. But really, the defining moment, and I'm getting to what I think your listeners really need to hear is your identity tends to get anchored to your sport, but it is not forever. And you're going to have to develop a new identity, and you're going to have to figure out how to do that. And it's not an easy trail for anybody, but I will, if I may, I'll tell you in short order how it happened for me. And it happened in about 20 seconds, and it was because of somebody else. So, one timer, first loser for about a decade. And then NBC says, hey, we'd be our analyst for the Olympics. And I couldn't say no to that. So, I'm back at the Olympics 8 years later. Interviewing the parents and coaches. That was my job to feed the commentary people the information about what's going on. And 16 days of the 17 days of the Winter Olympics, I'm still a one-time first loser in my head. But we're at dinner the night before the gold medal round, and one of the parents is sitting across from me at dinner, and he looked at me nervously and he said, I need to talk to you. And I was like, what did I do? Like, he's making me nervous.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
walk away from the table. And then he said to me, John, I just want you to know that we wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for you. I said, I don't know what you mean. He said, you don't remember probably, but 12 years ago, after you won your silver medal, you brought it to a little reception in Bay City, Michigan. I brought my son Alex. He was 11 at the time. He'd never skated before in his life. You signed an autograph, you put your medal around his neck. The next day, he joined the Bay City Speed Skating Club, and tomorrow he's skating in the gold medal final.
Oh my word. Wow. That's
My
powerful.
entire life changed in 20 seconds. I went from
That's crazy.
one-timer first loser that it didn't matter
Yeah.
to realizing it did matter and ultimately that I matter and that I can make a difference. So I got my daughter skating. I started coaching. I've been highly involved ever since. I still work for NBC every 4 years. And more importantly, I started talking about it because I didn't talk about skating at
Right.
all
Yeah.
those 12 years. And now I am a paid international keynote speaker. This is all I do. I've told this story for more than 100,000 people live and probably more than a million virtually in more than 19 countries.
Wow. That's amazing. It's inspirational for me to hear that story because working with athletes, obviously an NIL, and as they build their own athlete brand, and there's some appearances we'll go to that aren't right well attended, and you wonder, how impactful this was, or
Right.
was this successful? But the thing is, you just never know, and I've heard that story. In different variations, in several different ways, is you don't know that next kid you're going to reach or connect with, and you just don't know who that is. And I think that's a really powerful story for all the athletes that are listening, whether it's one autograph you sign or whether it's 400. Know that there's one, all it takes is one.
Right. That's right.
Yep. Cool. So talk to me about being a TEDx speaker, and now how you've gone into your own, and you've clearly found yourself again, and now professor and author with the 2 books. Talk to me about how you're growing your own personal brand now around your athletic kind of career.
Yeah, so I went into consulting and did that for a number of years. Sort of relatively normal business life. Moved into a client, climbed the corporate ladder for another 6, 7 years. Decided that was too routine and boring for me. Went back to consulting for a couple of years, and then about I think it was 11 years ago, I was telling a story in a meeting, um, part of the story that I shared with you, and somebody said that would make a great TED Talk, and I was like, well, I have no idea how to do that, and I will never do that. I couldn't think of anything more terrifying than standing in front of a room of 500 people and trying to tell a story. And he's like, no, you really need to do it. Like, really need to do it. Talk to the organizer. He can give you some coaching. And so I met with the guy, and he's like, you really have to do it. So I signed up for it, and I had 6 weeks to prepare, and I was beyond nervous standing on that stage. Probably more nervous, honestly, than the Olympic medal final.
Well, because you felt like you knew what you were doing. You were
Right.
prepared for the Olympics, right? It's
Yeah.
like now I'm completely unprepared. I don't know what's going to happen right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But about 30 seconds in, I was totally in the flow, nailed it, felt great, walked off the stage, standing ovation. And then they published it up a couple of weeks later. And again, I was consulting at the time, and one of my clients said, hey, in addition to our consulting arrangement, could you do that talk for us at this upcoming meeting? And I was like, sure. And then the business developed, the salespeople got involved. I wasn't involved in the negotiations. And he came back to me and he's like, yeah, so it's good. We're going to do it. It's in February. 2 days at the Lowe's in Santa Monica, a couple cocktail receptions, a 45-minute talk. And, they're going to pay us $17,500. And I was like, what? Why? Why would anybody do that? Like, I had no idea of like
This
speaking
world.
fees, the
Yeah.
whole,
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. So I was like, oh, okay. Now, I didn't get that money, right? So I go give the talk, and it's for a insurance company, and they had their brokers there, and like 6 brokers convene on me afterwards, and like, no, can you do that for my company? Can you do that for my company? So I ended up doing it like 9 more times over the next 3, 4 months, and I didn't get any of that money. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I could do this by myself. So I gave my notice and quit my job July 8th of 2015. So it's been just over 10 years, and I've been doing this ever since. And it's absolutely a phenomenal, phenomenal lifestyle job. And, you get paid to inspire people. You get paid to travel the world and go to parties. It's my
Wow.
sort of a running
Yeah.
joke. Sort of true.
I like that. And then talk to me about kind of when you talk about some of these things that make you an expert of the fields of innovation and design thinking and strength, resiliency, and um, chronoception. Like, what are these things in the neuroscience and psychology of kind of time perception that you've obviously been able to, create and develop, and as you said here, design endless summers?
So, at Stanford, I studied under a guy named David Kelly in Stanford's product design program. He's still the head of the design school there. He's notable not only for that, but he's the head of IDEO, which is an innovation consulting firm. He is the father of something called design thinking, which is a creative problem-solving methodology that I always bring to my talks. And most notable probably is he was Steve Jobs' right-hand man, good friend, and key designer for 15 years, co-creating the Macintosh, the Lisa, the Macintosh, and the first iteration of the iPhone. So
Yeah, that's not a bad gig.
yeah, but core to design thinking, and this is sits underneath all of my talks, is when you're not seeing success on a challenge, you probably framed the problem wrong. So ask a better question. And so all my talks, all three of them anchor to a commonly asked question that's okay. It's just there's a better one. So the first talk, which you heard a piece of, is instead of how do I fix my weaknesses, how do I design for my strengths?
Right.
So that's talk number one. Talk number two is still brings in athletics, and all of your athletes will know this, though they may not realize it. So I'll help them. Instead of how do I reduce stress to perform better, which seemingly everybody in the business world is trying to do, how do I perform better under greater stress and learn to like it? Which is what athletes have been doing for millennia, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Like we take on more weights, more stress, more miles, more meters, more everything. And when you get better at it, you learn to like it because it's a game. And so part of that talk is how do you gamify stress and change your neurochemical balance in your brain is fundamentally different when you make something into a game versus viewing it as a threat or a challenge. So that's that talk. And then the last talk, my favorite, is, and it's a big, big question, but if 98% of adults feel that time accelerates the older you get and that summers feel shorter than forever, how do we slow that down? Instead of more years in your life, how do you experience more life in your years? How do you slow, stop, and reverse the perceived acceleration of time most adults feel and experience the endless summers of youth again? And as it turns out, it's completely possible.
Yeah, wow. Well, I love the way that you have shifted the mindset for people because I've found that as well, that when I feel like I have so much to do, I end up using kind of that athlete mentality, which is, okay, I need to get all this done. How am I going to perform at the top of my game? What can I do to be better at this? And instead of maybe doing something one way, I'm like, all right, well, if I'm going to cut back on time to be able to do something more efficiently, this is what I need to do. And it almost comes out because you realize when you are under this stress to be able to figure out what you need to do. And I think that if athletes could tap into that as part of, their jobs that they're going to have and things like that, they will excel much like many athletes do in their careers because they have that positive mentality. Number one, I think that's important, is to be able to tap into that positivity rather than negativity, and then also be able to transition and say, okay, how am I going to make this better, right? Rather than give up and say I can't do this anymore. So I love what you're saying. So all right, so let's give people some more information on how they can connect with you, with being able to, obviously, you've got so many different things going on, from the TED Talks to the books. Talk to me about the books real quick. I'm just excited to hear your thoughts on what you've been able to accomplish, as an author.
So my first book was a poetry book of all things. So that's, kind of its own thing, but it's all about time and how we experience time.
Yeah.
It's called The Time Manifesto. The second book, and the third book's in the works, but the second book is called Design for Strengths, Applying Design Thinking to Individual and Team Strengths and Weaknesses. And we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And then the third book, which is in the works, is called Counterclockwise, How to Slow the Acceleration of Time. So that one's in the works, but I do love writing. I mean, 20 years ago, I was in a business meeting and they asked the room like they do, what would you be doing 10 years from now if you could do anything? And most people gave the pat answers of, I'll be the CEO, or, I'll be retired on the beach or something. And I literally just said, okay, no, if I could do anything, I get paid to travel the world, have adventures, and write about them. So that now is true for the last 10
Yeah.
years. And I've really had a great, great decade of really getting to see the world and meet some amazing people.
Wow, that is cool. All right, so how would you like people to get in touch with you, get more information about your books, about your speaking engagements? Hit us with it.
Easiest way is just my website, which is just my name, John K, the K is important,
Yeah.
Coyle.com. And I have my blog there. I have links to my books, the TED Talks. I have a YouTube channel, which is John K. Coyle 1 on YouTube that I just started. So that's just getting going, but it's all about the time stuff. And The new framing for the time talk, and maybe the book will change as well, is around time capital. So we invest our financial capital in various sorts of investments, seeking various sorts of returns with various sorts of risks. Most of the wealthy people I know try to invest their time in low risk opportunities, hoping for high returns, and it doesn't work that way. Life really is about life begins at the edge of your comfort zone, as the saying goes, and it's actually true.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Well, I think that's also motivation for me as I start to launch an online course for NIL and really try to help as many people as I can because, as you can imagine, John, I hear from parents and athletes all the time, like, what is this NIL stuff? How does my son or daughter do it? Right. And I'm like, I would love to sit here and be able to tell you that, but I need to be able to tell more people and I need to be able to, bring in the revenue, right. And be able to help people. But so an online course is going to be the way that I'm going to do it. And especially as you can appreciate, this world is changing with NIL so fast. There's no way to, I wrote a book. I wrote a children's book because I wrote a story that was already happened and it was not going to change. It was done. It was true story. And now I'm like, all right, I'm not going to go try and tackle the legislation that's going to change 2 years from now, 5 years from now, et cetera. I need to go and I need to use, and a little bit here, you talked about using your strengths as a broadcaster. I also know that I have a superpower, which is to be able to broadcast and talk and not be afraid of a camera and do all those things. And so I have to play to my strengths. And what I realized was that's an online course and that's me using my background and my skills to be able to do that. So it's been very reaffirming to talk with you today, John. And I'm sure many others, especially athletes, will hear this episode and maybe reshape the way they think about their career as well. So this has been extremely helpful.
Awesome. Great to meet you, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely, John. Well, this has been a great episode here on the Athlete Brand Advisor podcast. I'm Greg Glynn. We're glad you could tune in and stay pliable, my friends.
Thanks for listening to the Athlete Brand Advisor podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes from today's episode and catch up on recent episodes at pliablemarketing.com. We also encourage you to share topics and guest ideas by emailing our production staff at pliablemarketing@gmail.com. We love hearing from our loyal listeners and athletes who want to grow their brand. So jump in and be part of the podcast because that's how we roll.